Hi everyone, I'm Anya Parampil and you're watching Red Lines. It's been over 2 months since the world first caught wind of the mysterious illness sweeping Wuhan, China. For weeks, outsiders watched as the Chinese government responded to the outbreak of COVID-19, commonly known as a novel strain of coronavirus, swiftly and harshly. Wuhan, a city of 12 million people, was the first to be placed under total lockdown. By the eve of Chinese New Year on January 22nd, all public transportation was closed as officials scrambled to contain the virus. They eventually placed 16 cities and some 46 million people under quarantine. Many in the West seized the opportunity to mock China for employing so-called authoritarian tactics against the virus, blasting out images of entire cities, once filled with life, appearing eerily empty. Others jumped to downplay the threat of the virus in an effort to quell fear and defend China. Even I initially fell for the argument that flu cases kill a substantial amount of people in the US and around the world every year, and therefore coronavirus was nothing to worry about. But I was wrong, and so were others who minimized the illness. We can now confidently declare that China's response was nothing to mock. Rather, it was entirely reasonable considering the scale of the looming crisis. The World Health Organization is now praising the Chinese government's management of the outbreak. Listen to what WHO's Assistant Director General, Dr. Bruce Aylward, had to say when speaking with Chinese media.
Because what I saw was a tremendous sense of responsibility and of duty to protect their families, their communities, and even the world from this disease. It was truly inspiring. I left with such a deep admiration for the people of Wuhan and for Chinese society in general. You know, the real heroes of this response are those people, you know, sitting home in skyscrapers and apartment buildings for weeks on end. And, you know, the few that I did meet, they said, you know, we're playing our role, we're doing our part. And that is so powerful. And the world just owes such a huge debt to the people of Wuhan. And I just wanted the people of Wuhan to know that the world knows that, and we're sharing that story. What you're doing is so important. No, you leave a little bit of your heart in China, and especially in a place like Wuhan at a time like this.
While China appears to have contained the spread of coronavirus within its own borders, and officially claims to have seen a drastic slowdown in the rate of infection over the past week, the illness seems to have picked up a passport and is now an international traveler. Dozens of countries now report cases of COVID-19. South Korea, Italy, and Iran have been hit particularly hard. South Korea immediately worked to implement widespread testing, gaining the capacity to screen up to 15,000 people per day. On Monday, Italy's prime minister placed the country under complete lockdown, canceling public events and barring travel except in the case of emergency or for work. Meanwhile, Iran has reported over 6,000 cases. With 10% of its parliament infected, the country's government is virtually paralyzed. Even its vice president and deputy health minister contracted the disease. U.S.-imposed sanctions have drastically inhibited the country's ability to manage the health crisis. This week, Vice President of Iran's Union of Importers of Medical Equipment, Syed Rahman Fallah, told media, quote, "Several international companies are ready to ship the coronavirus diagnosis kit to Iran, but we cannot pay them." Meanwhile, one of the organizations which lobbied for those sanctions, the America-Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC, became an epicenter of the spread of coronavirus in the United States after the group confirmed that at least 5 individuals who attended their annual conference at the beginning of March have tested positive for the virus. Top U.S. officials, including Vice President Mike Pence and over 2/3 of the U.S. Congress, attended the meeting. Yet Washington has made little to no effort to contain the outbreak, as confirmed cases in the United States have now surpassed 1,000. Israel, however, announced that it would be placing all AIPAC attendees under quarantine as they return to the country. Officials eventually announced they will place all foreign travelers under a 14-day quarantine upon their arrival to Israel. Over 100,000 Israelis are currently under quarantine. Top religious and tourist sites in the occupied territories now appear as though they are completely abandoned. While the health crisis in occupied Palestine worsens, the greatest impact of the virus has been economic. As a result of the shutdown, the already restricted travel of Palestinians has become more intensely controlled. People who work and live on different sides of the occupation wall have completely lost their livelihood. The apartheid system in Israel will only exacerbate the suffering felt by Palestinians as they weather this crisis. Here in the United States, however, it is clear that our government is drastically underprepared to respond to the outbreak of coronavirus. Unlike China, we do not have a strong centralized government with the capacity to contain the virus. And as in Palestine, we will all feel the economic impact of this disease, whether or not we ourselves are infected. And that should concern all of us. Remember what Dr. Aylward of the World Health Organization said about the feeling of collective responsibility and social cohesion which existed in China and allowed it to manage coronavirus? We don't have that here, but it's something we should strive for, especially in such frightening and uncertain times.